What's going on, guys? Today we're going to be going through the next part of my 2026 season preview series. Today we're going to be talking about the Buffalo Bills. Now, if you haven't seen one of these videos this year yet or before on my channel, I'm basically going to go through the offense and defense from 2025, what went well and what did not, the additions and losses for each side of the ball, some storylines for each side of the ball, a little recap of what the schedule looks like for the team, and a record prediction at the end. Now, the plan is to get through all 32 teams before the start of the 2026 season. So far, I have done 3 videos, and if you want to see those, make sure you look on my channel, and make sure you like and subscribe to the channel to see videos. If I haven't done one about your favorite team yet, I'll do that in the future. Looking at the offense from last year, their dynamic duo, Josh Allen and James Cook, they were probably the top player at their position in the entire league. You at least could make the argument for both of these guys. They were the key reasons why this team was 4th in scoring and the number 1 team in running the ball. This is still a bit too turnover prone, and that is somewhat led by Josh Allen as well. It's probably the biggest reason why this team has not either made it farther in the playoffs, or you look at some of the losses they've had over these last handful of years. And a lot of it kind of stems from having interceptions or having turnovers in general. And it is something that going forward they're going to need to get better at. Offensively, the Buffalo Bills made some big changes to their team, both in the coaching staff, where they elevated offensive coordinator Joe Brady to head coach to replace Sean McDermott. They also hired Pete Carmichael as their offensive coordinator. He was previously with Denver as an associate or an assistant on the offensive side of the ball. This team traded a 2026 second-round pick for DJ Moore, and they also drafted Skylar Bell in the 4th round out of UConn. This really, it kind of makes the receiver room, I don't want to say a strength, but in the previous few years, they've had a tough time trying to replace Stephon Diggs as a number 1 option for Josh Allen. They thought they were going to get something out of Keon Coleman these last couple of years, and it never really materialized. And so this is a really big swing in the direction of trying to make sure that there's enough around Josh Allen. They already know that they have the running game figured out. And the offensive line has been pretty good these last few years. And so it's really just trying to get this passing game more efficient and keep things easy for Josh Allen going forward. And as you can see from the departures, it's really just David Edwards and Mitchell Trubisky that you are kind of worried about. David Edwards has been one of the stars on this offensive line the last few years. He went to New Orleans on a 4-year deal. And Mitchell Trubisky has quietly been one of the better backup quarterbacks these last years that he's been with Buffalo, and since he's been in the league, not in a starting role. He's been a really good backup quarterback, and Buffalo is definitely going to miss him. There was an obvious, liking of the situation. Buffalo liked having him there, and he liked being in Buffalo. The Bills are also losing Curtis Samuel and possibly Brandon Cooks. There's some stories out there that say that Brandon Cooks wants to be back in Buffalo, but with the additions that the Bills have already made to their wide receiver room, it would make it even more crowded to try to bring Brandon Cooks in and have him be a part of this team. And now my storylines for this offense in 2026, I'm going to start with the receiving core, and the big question is going to be, is this receiving core good enough to win a Super Bowl? They had Khalil Shakur, they had Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid, and they have James Cook. Those were really the 4 guys in the passing game that you were worried about last year. This year, they added Skylar Bell, they added DJ Moore, and you hope that someone who is also on this screen, you hope that Keon Coleman can kind of make the best out of this situation. There's a really good chance that this could be the last year that he's in Buffalo. There's younger options on the roster that Buffalo would be fine moving on from Keon Coleman if he does not materialize into a solid option on this team. And this is going to kind of boil down to how much better can the offense really be. If you look back at the stats, since 2020, when Josh Allen was in his first full season as the starter for this team has been top 5 in scoring every single year. And even though they had made the addition of Joe Brady, who's not really an addition, he got elevated to the head coach position. There's not going to be much different about how this team is going to attack you. It's just hopefully going to be more efficient, and it's hopefully going to be less turnover prone And I think that's really where this team can get better. Not as much in terms of scoring or pure yardage standpoints, but just being more efficient and not having, drive-ending turnovers or game-altering mistakes in that regard. The defense for Buffalo was decent last year. Scoring, they were 12th in the league. They really were not good against the run, but they were very good against the pass, being the number one team in terms of passing yards allowed. Cole Bishop led this team in tackles and interceptions. He also had a couple of sacks. And Ed Oliver, who, even though he missed 16 games, including the playoffs, he was one of the main producers in the pass rush with 3 sacks, 5 quarterback hits, and 7 tackles for loss. It was really looking like, if you just take that 3-game sample, even though it wasn't the first 3 games of the year, he played game 1 and then missed 7 weeks, came back for games 8 and 9, and then missed the rest of the season until the playoffs. And so for Ed Oliver, and really, it's kind of an indictment on this pass rush in general. They need to be better and they need to be healthy, because it's kind of going to be, if one of these guys goes down, there's not much else behind them from a pass rush standpoint. In the offseason this year, Buffalo made some pretty big additions. They get Bradley Chubb from Miami on a 3-year deal. They also get D. Alford from Atlanta on a 3-year deal. And they made some big moves in the draft as well, getting TJ Parker to be their developmental pass rusher on this defensive line. Davison Igbinosun, who it was already a surprise that this team was targeting a cornerback in the draft after they had already made some additions, but even trading up to be able to draft Davison Igbinosun. They obviously really like him. He probably, he was one of the lesser regarded cornerbacks in this year's draft, and he's going to get a chance to show why he thinks he's a really good cornerback from this year's draft. And I think he joins a cornerback room that now is a little bit crowded, but they're going to be very talented. And as little departures as there were for the offense, it's even less for the defense. They see Cam Lewis sign with the Chicago Bears on a 2-year deal, and AJ Epinesa goes to Philly, and they trade Taron Johnson to Las Vegas. Other than that, really the only guy that probably isn't around is Joey Bosa, that you're really going to feel that presence gone. He, I believe, was the team leader in sacks last year. Or actually, he was behind Gregory Rousseau for the team lead in sacks. But it's not going to be a huge loss for this team. And now my storylines for this defense: how good is Ed Oliver going to be after that biceps injury that he had last year? It took him out of 16 games. It's somewhat luckily not a lower body injury, which I feel like, even though he's one of the big guys, you still don't want to see a lower body injury. A biceps injury is definitely nothing to just be happy about, but it hopefully is not something that's going to limit him going forward, because like you saw, he was one of the few guys last year that even in only 3 games, he was one of their best pass rushers. Who emerges in this crowded cornerback room? I already mentioned it with Davison Igbinosun, but you have first-round pick from last year, Maxwell Hairston, who had a solid year but got off to a tough start due to injuries. And, there's Igbinosun, there's Hairston, there's Christian Benford, who's probably the no-doubt number 1 corner. You have Toriano Pride, who you drafted this year as well. You have D. Alford, who you gave some decent money to from Atlanta. And so you just have a crowded room, but like I said, it's very talented in that cornerback room. And it's a good problem to have. You want to have good depth with young options for the future, as well as guys who are here to play well now. And this is going to be a new defense under Jim Leonhard. Now, Leonhard actually played in Buffalo. He had a couple of seasons as a Buffalo Bill. I believe in 2015 was one of the years. Basically the last 10 years, he's been a defensive backs coach with Wisconsin. And in 2023, he was the defensive coordinator for a loaded defensive back group that saw 3 guys in Quan Martin, Devin Witherspoon, and Sidney Brown get drafted from that team. And so he is a guy who, for the last 2 years, has been coaching guys, like I said, Devin Witherspoon in 2023, in 2024 and 25. He had Patrick Surtain, he's had Riley Moss, he's had Jaquan McMillan. He's been a guy who has coached some really talented players. I think he's going to love the opportunity to have this really good defensive back and cornerback room, and it's hopefully going to be the group that leads them to the playoffs and even further than that. Looking at the schedule for the Buffalo Bills, they obviously have some tough matchups early in the season. You look at the first 5 weeks, they play in Houston, a place where they've always struggled during the Josh Allen era. Detroit, the Chargers, New England, and the Rams. That really, that's a 5-week stretch where we could see this team start 2-3 or 3-2. But then you get into an easier part of the schedule where within about a 6-week stretch, you face teams that either have no quarterback currently on their roster, or they have someone that's a young option who's not really proven yet. And then in between that, you have Baltimore, and you end the year with Miami and New York as well. So I think you look at it from Buffalo's standpoint and you say, hey man, if we get to week 8 versus Baltimore and we're 5-3, or even at worst, we're 4-4 after that week 8 game. You still have all 4 games against the Jets and Dolphins. You have a game against the Minnesota Vikings and the Kansas City Chiefs. 2 teams who I think they're in different places along their own development. But, Kansas City is very far from a perfect team. Minnesota is very far from a perfect team. And I think Buffalo projects to be better than both of those teams in 2026. So those should be, along with those games against the Jets and Dolphins, that should be a way for the Buffalo Bills to kind of stack some wins late in the year and make a push towards the playoffs. And now for my record prediction for this team. I think easily this team is a playoff team at 10-7 for a floor. They have a new, strength with their wide receiver room. They have a loaded defense in terms of their secondary, and they have some guys that are coming back from injury that you really hope are able to make a big impact. I think the ceiling for this team is Super Bowl champions. As much as they probably hate to admit it, but seeing a team like the New England Patriots get to the Super Bowl last year should give them so much confidence in themselves, because this is a team, I think, talent-wise, they stack up to New England. Josh Allen is obviously much more talented than Drake May is, even though May had an MVP caliber year last year. Josh Allen is a better quarterback. He is a better player than Drake May. You look at the wide receiver room, DJ Moore, Khalil Shakur, and the rest of this wide receiver room, why is that not better than what New England had? And so to me, it's just like, Buffalo should look at it from a standpoint of this is a really good team that we have put together. And if everything falls right, we could see them lifting the Lombardi Trophy. That's going to be it for this video. Make sure you like the video, comment down below if you have a certain team you want to see me do a video about. Currently, I'm just going through every single team alphabetically, but if you have a favorite team that you want me to talk about, leave a comment down below saying what team that is, and I'll see you in the next video.